Bill Maher clashed with scientist Neil deGrasse Tyson over transgender issues in Friday's episode of Real Time with Bill Maher. The host and deGrasse Tyson sparred over why Democrats lost the November elections and if it did, in fact, have anything to do with transgender culture wars. Let's watch that clip.
I'm not for canceling anybody on either side.
Yeah.
So But here's what I think is the scandal.
What?
This is in Scientific American.
Yeah.
Less than a year ago. Inequity between male and female athletes is the result not of inherent biological differences between the sexes, but of biases in how they are treated in sports. That's nuts. And it sure ain't scientific, and it's in Scientific American. And that's why the Democrats lost the election. It's true.
Bill, every 20 minutes on your platform, you come up with another reason why the Democrats lost. No. You already have the answer. They lost the election. So anything you say is why
true.
They did it.
First of all, you don't watch this show, so you don't know that. I know you don't, and it's okay. But you talk as if you do, and you fucking don't. And that's okay. Just don't bullshit me. That's the one thing people can't ever do on this show is bullshit me. And that's fine. But I don't say that. I have very good reasons. But engage with the idea here. What I'm asking is, Scientific American is saying, basically, that the reason why an WNBA team can't beat the Lakers is because of societal bias.
What you're saying is not Scientific American says that. An editor for Scientific American says that who no longer has the job. So don't indict a 170-year-old magazine because somebody...
Okay, this is called Scientific American, and they're printing something
because someone enters the cesspool that is social media and then participates in that exchange. So
why can't you
let's talk about science.
Why can't you just say this is not scientific and Scientific American should do better?
It looked like they were having a fun time.
Absolutely, a good debate. It's almost rising like over in Real Time with Bill Maher these days.
Yes.
Now, well, I have a few views on this, as you might imagine. One thing I thought was interesting was how uneasy Neil deGrasse Tyson seemed there.
Yes, not a man who is reluctant to share his opinion.
No.
Generally.
Right, exactly. And he seemed to be avoiding the point that Bill Maher was making. Now, I have taken exception to various things Bill Maher has said in the past, and I do think on the election, and indeed in terms of politics generally, he is prone to deciding that the certain number of things that Bill Maher cares about passionately are the things that are decisive in elections and nothing else matters. So I don't love that. But Maher's point was about this contention in a purportedly scientific magazine that gender disparity in performance was a product of societal biases or prejudices rather than biological differences. That seems on its face a fairly absurd argument.
Yes.
And Neil deGrasse, and you and I have spoken about this before, and Neil deGrasse Tyson was sort of avoiding that. Just one more point, Robby, on this. In another segment of that discussion, they were talking about the sports issue, and Tyson said, well, women actually do perhaps have an advantage in long-distance swimming, which is true, but for biologically different reasons, which is that women typically have a greater proportion of their body weight in body fat, which gives female bodies extra buoyancy, which can be of assistance in
exactly. That's a biological difference. Because there are differences in the aggregate, and there are some areas of overlap, but it's starker differences in terms of elite athletic ability than movies and entertainment suggest to us when there's always like a kick-ass female soldier or assassin or something. Doesn't exist in real life for the most part.
Well, I mean, there are female assassins in real life, but anyway, yes. But there are,
there are exceptional abilities, and there are occasional people who have some biological abnormalities or genitalia growth. Yes, there are exceptions to every rule, and we got to figure out how to accommodate those people in non-cruel sorts of ways, but it's just so clear in terms of sports. So they were talking about Scientific American, where this editor, whose name is Laura Helmuth, recently resigned after she had a profanity-laced post-election take where she said Gen X, she went after her own generation, Gen X, being full of effing fascists, F them to the moon and back, she said of people celebrating Trump's victory. You know, what? I don't care about that. But We had Jesse Singal, who's a writer, a very slightly left of center, has been attacked by a lot of people on the left, but writes about science issues from, I would say, a free speech perspective and a anti-cancel culture perspective. He wrote an article for the magazine I write for, Reason, about her tenure there. And it's not just like one or two bad tweets from this woman. She presided over this very prestigious institution publishing so much nonsense on these kinds of topics. He has a roundup of them. Scientific American, he writes, under Helmuth, when it was bad, it was really bad. They published Denial of Evolution is a Form of White Supremacy. They published, this is my favorite one, Why the Term Jedi is Problematic for Describing Programs that Promote Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. So DEI is usually the shorthand we use for this, but apparently at some point people were proposing Jedi for Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion. You know, that's catchier. Jedi is, we know what Jedi are from Star Wars. Sure. But so this is an article saying don't call these programs Jedi because in the Star Wars franchise, the Jedi are a religious order of intergalactic police monks prone to white saviorism and toxic masculinity. Violent duels with phallic lightsabers, gaslighting by means of Jedi mind tricks, etc. You'd think this is parody. No. This was actually published in Scientific American.
I mean, I certainly hope you know that I'm not going to be defending that sort of thing. Look, I mean, I don't know anything really about Laura Helmuth except the fracas that erupted over those tweets. Well, they were actually on Blue Sky, I believe, but the social media messages going after people who had voted for Trump. The excerpt that you just read seems pretty risible. I'm sure she would defend her tenure in other ways. I've no idea exactly what those ways are. But the bigger point is, I think, about how discussions around science have become politicized, and people typically on the left would complain about the influence of industry or moneyed interests on science and whether research has been skewed to support sort of corporate interests. But then whenever you do have something like the Scientific American, a very prestigious publication, as you say, appearing to adopt a very, very ideological and quote-unquote woke lens to look at science, I think that's obviously a problem.
I mean, I will never forget. I remember where I was when my just faith in like scientific experts was broken. I was sitting on the middle of the pandemic, sitting on my patio, the summer of the initial year of the pandemic, and I was seeing statements on Twitter and article quotes from Fauci-esque people, not exactly Fauci, but all saying that as the protests were spilling out into riots over George Floyd, the summer of Black Lives Matter and everything, and the same people who had said that that everything had to be shut down and locked down and wear a mask on the side, and we were still in the midst of absolute levels of lockdown, and you'd been accused of an exercise in ritual human sacrifice for just going to the beach, as they said of people in Florida. But the protesters, because they were protesting racial injustice, and racial injustice is also a kind of malady for which the cure is mass social unrest, that was okay. And that broke me, and that broke a lot of people, because racism is not a disease in the same sense that COVID was a disease. It's not your diagnosis that this is is a political science or social change kind of argument that protesting is the right way. Maybe it is or maybe it isn't. But you as a disease reacher have no expertise or knowledge about what moves public opinion or what is the right way to respond to a complicated social problem versus an actual medical problem. And that was when I realized, like, these people are just going to say, they're now going to purport to be experts in every realm of human behavior. And then if you challenge them, they're going to say, well, you can't disagree with scientists. And I really dislike that, as did a lot of people watching right now.
I think that is part of a longer discussion, Robby, about the politicization of science, and we can get to that at some other point. And I think today we will get in a later segment through the issue of, we will return to the issue of the trans topic and how it may affect the election.